Welcome to the Gender in Focus podcast. I'm Elle, and each week I get to ask Kai Scott, the president of Transfocus Consulting, all the questions you have ever wanted to ask about trans and non-binary people in the workplace and in the wider world.
I have heard of instances where cisgender people are kind of giving other cisgender people a hard time for not sharing their pronouns. And we really need to stop with that because unfortunately that pushes people past their breaking point.
I find it really interesting the way that people interpret someone suggesting something as being forced. And really, I think what they mean is I'm witnessing somebody say something that I'm not comfortable with.
Everyone wants progress until it feels pushed on them. When it comes to trans inclusion, some people say these issues are being crammed down their throats, in air quotes, when in reality the goal is opposite, expanding options and creating more choice, not less. Yet even with well-intentioned actions like mandating pronoun sharing or making every washroom all gender can spark backlash if people aren't ready. In this episode, we explore the fine line between advancing equity and overwhelming others, and how to move forward in ways that invite understanding instead of resistance. And I'm joined once again by Elle, we're gonna work on unpacking this issue together. It's a very complex one. How are you doing?
I'm doing so great. How are you?
I'm doing great too. Yeah.
Okay, this one is a topic that I find a little bit frustrating. So I'm going to try and be on my best behavior with this.
Yes.
But I want to start with what the difference is between people feeling like change is being forced upon them and change actually being forced, and like where that difference lies.
Oof, that's a good one. That's a good question to start with. I mean, I will just speak from my own experience, right? Because that's often a good starting point, is to understand what's the difference between somebody kind of pushing something on me, no matter the topic, and what is kind of a genuine invitation that maybe initially is uncomfortable, but eventually when I explore it, opens up into this whole other world that maybe I knew little about or nothing about, and it's actually a good thing. And oftentimes it's about how somebody is asking the question that can give you some clue, although it's not the only one, because sometimes people kind of they over expect people to be this like perfectly patient person. Not everybody should be or have to do that to be able to be understood. Sometimes people are frustrated, and that's a legitimate frustration given what they're trying to address. So it's the how, it's what somebody is asking about, and to the degree that I am able to do something at that red hot moment, or maybe a little bit later once I've kind of sorted myself out, right, is like how much space is provided for me to get up to speed. So there's that aspect of the equation. And then probably a third piece for me is what kinds of supports are provided as well. As especially if something is new to me or others, there's just a little bit more that is needed to bring people along. So are those aspects provided? And if not, if I ask for them, is that something that somebody can help me with, right? Or direct me somewhere else, or whatever the case may be. So those are some of the kind of key features of what I could see as the difference between kind of being forced to do something just because somebody like thinks this is the way and kind of my way or the highway, versus like indications that people want to help and are there to help to the extent that they can, and have put things in place and kind of how they're asking.
When it comes to conversations about inclusion, why is like perception so important? Why does that matter with that?
Yes. So perception is a tricky one, because things can feel very real and not be the case. And that's kind of mind playing tricks sometimes. And
Right.
that can be at play, especially with an inclusion where somebody's initial response is very strong and perhaps resistant or questioning, or whatever other reaction, a strong reaction. And but that when you look a little bit further, you realize, oh, it's not as kind of scary or big or that
Mhm.
much different from other things. But it does require that little extra effort to be able to kind of piece that all together. And so some perceptions can indicate that whatever is being asked or people are invited to when it comes to, say, gender diversity is like too far or somehow threatening, when actually there's not that much threatening to it. It's people asking for pretty basic things. Think
Mhm.
about using the proper pronouns. Like, this is not like this huge difference. Like, everybody else is afforded that, but somehow trans and non-binary folks are kind of left out.
With regards to the pronoun thing, like, you're not actually affected in any way at all by like,
Mm,
sometimes like, I'll see this, especially because I do the social media stuff
mm,
for Trans Focus. I see it a lot in the comment sections about like forcing people to do something, and it's like, oh, you would use a pronoun regardless, so
yeah.
you may as well just use the one that the other person wants. Like,
Hmm.
it doesn't actually do anything to you. You're not going to come out in a rash
Mm,
because you've been respectful. Like, you're okay.
right. Indeed. Yeah, it doesn't have like a huge material consequence to that person's life, and it makes a huge difference
No.
on the other end, right? Because so
Hmm.
often there's kind of mistreatment of trans and non-binary folks related to their pronouns. Like,
Hmm.
yeah.
So with that, there is a bit of a sort of um, balance that's needed when it comes to making progress that is actually progress and not
Mm,
just, I don't know, sort of a little token here and there. So a genuine progress, but
yeah,
also recognizing where we're at and what the comfort levels are of the people around us. And
right.
so how do we navigate that balance?
Yeah, that people may be at different levels of readiness to either partially or even fully participate in what we've kind of laid out, right?
Hmm.
And we, of course, don't want kind of a performative aspect where it's like, I don't quite
Yeah.
understand this, but I'm going to go along because I don't want people to be mad at me. And,
Hmm.
or people think I'm a bad person. And
Hmm.
so, sure, I'll do it. But you can get a sense that people are kind of being dragged along. Uh, and certainly some, maybe even many trans and non-binary folks can feel the difference between,
Hmm.
is this person just doing as they were told to, or that they actually understand and think that it's important to do this thing. um, and or people might have quiet conversations amongst themselves to be like, I don't get it, or I think this is not the way to do it,
Hmm.
and whatnot. And it's not to say that there isn't a discussion about some aspects, right, of changes. Certainly if you think about designing, you say a space, if it's a washroom, like, you want to think through the design and may
Hmm.
have to tweak it based on who's there and what the needs are. But that you're always thinking about it from an inclusion standpoint, not like barring people from access, but like, how do we make access possible? Not just on gender diversity, more broadly also. So um, yeah, I think it is important if people have different levels or abilities or capacities to kind of come along on a change. I think it is important for people to be honest, to say, I'm stuck here, And I don't think many people would fault folks for just be like, I want to be further along, but this is kind of where I'm at. And
Hmm.
figuring out how they want to take the next steps, right? And you don't always have to lean on trans and non-binary folks for the next steps, but are there other people that you can go and talk to sort this out, to see maybe there's something I'm missing, or that I can glean from others who are trying to be allies to get to the next level. I would also say too that just because somebody isn't ready doesn't mean that we don't advance, right? We
Hmm.
can't always just go to the lowest bar. Um, so there has to be kind of twofold spaces created where it's like, okay, how do we help people who are stuck or who need extra support or whatnot? So that's legit, that's genuine. And I think that's important. But then also continue to go forward with those who are ready and who do have capacity, because they do exist, right? And
Hmm.
so those can kind of run in parallel until at such point as people feel ready, they can connect up with the change that's happening. So I think
Hmm.
in that way, we can serve multiple needs in a genuine, honest way while also still continuing, right?
Hmm. And on that, then, how, like, at what point does prioritizing people's comfort
Mm.
start to hold back the change that is necessary?
Mm, yes, that happens a lot in the
Hmm.
work that we do, unfortunately. And I do have a space for, people who need more time. Like it's not
Yeah.
that, but it's just unfortunate that people who have reservations um, can slow things down, or in some cases can stop something from happening altogether. And they may not realize the power that they have in a group. Oftentimes they're seeing themselves as the victim versus the fact they may not be able to see that a thought is usually with other people that create that momentum towards something not happening, which actually materially impacts trans and non-binary folks.
Hmm.
And so, what to do about that is to provide spaces for people to ask questions, or, I find surveys to be really important because people can voice what's going on. Because I find if you don't have an avenue to express that, eventually it'll channel into something not happening. So, what are
Hmm.
those avenues, especially probably needing a bit more ways to be anonymous because people can feel self-conscious, but just some way of knowing what's happening kind of beneath the surface, I think is important.
Hmm.
uh, and then to figure out how to talk to people who need more time
Hmm.
without it detracting from the way forward. um, and also for organizations to realize that usually people have an initial response and then will change. And once something is implemented, kind of have the real experience of it to realize, oh, it wasn't actually such a big deal, you know?
Hmm.
Like all gender multi-stall washrooms is a perfect example. Um, there's so many organizations where we implement it, not 100%, just food places. People have their kind of misgivings about it, and I understand some of them. But when they're implemented, because they're designed very differently, people experience them and are like, oh, this is really comfortable. Oh, I actually feel really safe. Oh, we get to
Hmm.
collectively monitor. Oh, I have my own sink in my own stall. Like there's all these different things that they didn't expect. And suddenly they're like, these are the best washrooms. What was I
Right.
thinking before? Right. So making sure organizations allow for opportunity to change for people who are pumping the brakes, and not kind of pigeonholing them to always pumping the brakes. Like they can
Hmm.
actually feel a bit of hesitance, come along for the journey, learn, expand, grow, and perhaps they might think differently once it's there, right?
Hmm.
And they also have the option, if they don't feel comfortable, to use a men's or a women's, right? Like that
Hmm.
is important as well.
How can pushing people, like, on that kind of finding that balance,
Mm,
pushing people past their level of comfort or sort of where they are in their understanding it can sometimes backfire.
mm,
Like there's that balance of people realizing that it's actually okay, but then for some people it is actually just a bit too far.
mm.
So yeah, what can that look like?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are moments where the rate of change feels too fast for a lot of folks. And that can happen in a number of different groups within society, especially when it comes to trans and non-binary folks. To them it feels new, even though trans and non-binary folks have existed, but usually in the shadows, and so it's kind of feels very disconcerting to them. And if something is too far too fast, then the resistance kind of becomes something else, and things can be totally shut down, and never to be spoken of again, right? Like that kind of shutting down. And it is important to be able for folks to share what's going on for themselves, right? So that we hopefully don't get to that kind of breaking point, because it is important for these types of changes to occur. Exactly how, I think, is important for many different people to come together to talk about to make that possible.
Yeah.
Certain things can, you know, pretty consistently be addressed within organizations in a similar manner. Others, I think, are a little bit more context specific and do require some sorting out of details, right? So the more people that you can involve in that process from, as early as possible, can give
Mhm.
them some sort of ownership or buy-in into that process, right? So they don't feel like it's being put on them. It's that they were a contributing factor to making this possible. And
Right.
yeah, can have a degree of pride in it, like we sorted out this thing and yeah, we had to maybe kind of wrestle with some complex matters. But at the other end, coming out the other end, like I get where we got to and I maybe support a lot or most of it and maybe even a bit excited, right? Rather than, okay, something happened in a black box, and then suddenly, much to everybody's surprise, this is a completely different direction that we're going in. And I had no
Mhm.
idea how people came to that decision. Um, some organizations don't even announce it, and people find it that has changed,
Mhm.
and they're like, "What the heck is this?" And that
Mhm.
can create a lot of upset. So the the degree to which an organization involves people in the process of change, communicates that change in a accessible way, so not overly complex and convoluted. I tend to, when I'm explaining changes, say on washrooms and change rooms, make it broader. It's not just about trans people. Maybe trans people are a driving reason for it, but it
Mhm.
actually benefits, so many other groups. And
Mhm.
outlining those so that people can connect with some sort of benefit, I think really
Right.
helps to bring people
Yeah.
along. It's always allowing people to opt in to the new thing. So it's never
Mm.
something that they are forced to do. And this is something we reiterate a lot in all of our education or in any communications that we support with when there's a change being made, is that people can continue to do the old way for themselves, totally fine. Like for example, we're not forcing people to provide their pronouns, like that, whether it's a cisgender person or a trans person. It's just not a good thing. Let's not do that.
Mhm.
um, it's the options available if people want to. Like it seems pretty straightforward, but I have heard of instances where cisgender people are kind of giving other cisgender people a hard time for not sharing their pronouns. And we really need to stop with that, because unfortunately that pushes people past their breaking point. And then the people that they, take that anger and frustration out on is on trans and non-binary folks. So it's a good
Mhm.
intention, but it's gone off base in a way that has implications. And so I think making sure everything is voluntary is super important. Now, of course, if somebody has shared a pronoun and you refuse to use it, that's not what I'm talking about in terms of voluntary. Like that
Mhm.
is necessary for someone to respect somebody. But I'm saying things like, if you, say a washroom, yes, it's great to have all gender multi-stall as an option, but we still also need to have a few men's and women's spaces for folks who need and want those spaces. So we're not forcing them into the all gender multi-stall. Now, I think single unit washrooms would solve this whole thing, but unfortunately they cost more money and take up a lot of space. So it's not always possible
Mhm.
if you need a large set of washrooms. So, but there you have it.
I really want to talk about this, about well-intentioned allies,
Hmm.
because I think this is so important, that the actions of an ally can feel forceful and lead to pushback. And as you just said, that it's interpreted as trans and non-binary people doing that forceful action, not the cisgender person, because it's about the trans and non-binary people. So
Yeah.
can you go into that a bit further, because I think that's like, I know a lot of people who, and I've definitely done
Totally.
this myself, who would
Yeah.
fall into this.
Yeah. Yeah, and coming from a really good place, right? Wanting to be
Hmm.
active. They're like, you've told we should be active, and I'm like, absolutely. And there's like the overzealous version of active that can unfortunately cause harm, even if unintentional. But yeah, so when we are going a bit too strong on a particular thing and really almost to the extent of forcing somebody to do something, and when they're not ready to do it or don't understand it or are somewhere else, and they often misinterpret that pressure um, to be something that the trans and non-binary folks are forcing on them, right? So they don't see the cisgender person as having forced them. They see the trans and non-binary folks as having created this condition under which
Hmm.
this person is now suffering, right?
Hmm.
Versus it's, the cisgender person trying to do their best, but perhaps, being off a bit off base. And so, unfortunately, when that cisgender person, they will not do the thing that we ask them to do, sadly,
Yeah.
surprise. And then, secondarily, when they encounter a trans or non-binary person, they will take that out on them um,
Hmm.
because they're misunderstanding the situation and think that the trans people are ultimately at fault for what's happening, that this person forced me, and why are you requiring this? And then the trans person is like, I didn't force anybody to do anything, right? I'm just trying to live my life here. I've asked folks to use this pronoun, like. So
Yeah.
it's really important to think about the ways in which, as allies, we're approaching folks who maybe are at the beginning of their journey of understanding, and
Hmm.
coming with kind of a supportive and reassuring, even if firm, like this is important, right? And kind of being able to continuously check in and to be involved in that person's journey, but not in a way where we're forcing something on them, especially when they're not ready.
Hmm. What does sustainable, lasting change look like? And like that doesn't rely on forcing people, but still just gradually progresses forward all the same. What does
Hmm.
that look like overall?
Yeah. Oof. That's also another $1 million question. Like, how do we do this? Uh, yeah, I think it's just the key word is persistence, right? Um, any change, it can be difficult, especially in moments and maybe throughout, but that there's a continuous effort to keep taking the next step, even if maybe there's not full clarity. Like sometimes organizations really want full clarity before advancing, but maybe that's not possible. And yet
Hmm.
still taking that next step and the step after that. And, um, that the communications aspect being so important, right? Always explaining why and what. Just like maybe it feels like on repeat, but in a way that at some point lands for many, if not all, of the folks involved, um, and kind of being committed to that change rather than we'll maybe consider the change if everybody's on board, right? Like that's kind of
Hmm.
backwards in my mind. It's like, no, we'll commit to the change and then commit to making that a collaborative thing.
Right.
Um, and we'll communicate along the way, and we'll try to bring people along and whatnot. So that can often make a huge difference. But the sustainability also means, dedicating resources to it as well. Some of it costs, some of it doesn't, right? So it's not always about
Hmm.
resources, but certainly making sure that there's enough to sustain. Some changes take years, so making sure there's enough to sustain those types of changes, whether on gender diversity or more broadly. So that can often help, or those are some of the things that can help with sustainability.
I want to ask you about your own experiences with
Mm.
seeing forcing change or not, like what you've seen or what you've experienced.
I think where I've come to my approach to change comes from a very personal place.
Mm.
I've done a lot of, I've tried many different approaches to change, and some of them are a little more forceful, especially in my 20s. maybe people can relate, where you're like, this change needs to happen now, yesterday,
Yes.
actually, and chop
Hmm.
chop, let's get to it, and surprisingly, people don't respond to that. Like, what? Including members of my own family. I'm just shocked, right?
Right.
I
Staggering.
mean, I joke in some respects, and of course, some of these changes are important, right?
Mm.
And so there were moments of deep frustration when they weren't happening, and painful sometimes too, right? So I do want to acknowledge this side that kind of really desires long term, deep change that is not coming right now.
Hmm.
And then I also recognize kind of the other side, where if it's too fast and too unknown to somebody, that they will dig in. And I've had, personal experiences of that. And it's not until I let go of the desired outcome and be like, okay, I'm willing to go on a journey with this person. So I took a more relational approach to, maybe not change, because I let go of the concept of change, but I was like, what is possible between the two of us, given our worldviews, our approaches to life? Where's the overlap? Where can we work together? Where maybe
Hmm.
there's not overlap, and maybe it's just that's not a place we can generally agree, and maybe that's okay, or
Hmm.
maybe it's not okay, and then maybe I need to take a step back, right? So just trying to figure it out, um, and that has generally been a lot more fruitful and a lot more interesting too,
Hmm.
because then I'm connecting with folks and we're co-creating something, rather
Hmm.
than me being like, I have the answer and this is how it's going to go. And
Yeah.
also allowing people to step up in their own way for me too, right? It's not like I'm just a doormat and everybody does what they will, right? Like, that didn't actually end up happening, surprisingly.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I really love that, the way that you said about taking a relational approach. And like, I think one of the things that can sometimes get lost in this is that for the most part, and obviously not everybody, but for the most part, most people are trying to do their best and are
Yeah.
trying to do the right thing in the way that they think is right. And
Hmm.
maybe that's not aligned with the way you think things are right. But generally, that's what people want. And actually, when you look at it that way, you both want the same thing.
Yeah.
And so, if you both want the same thing, there is a way, most of the time, not always, but there is a way to bridge the gap somewhere.
Hmm.
And if you
Absolutely.
just take your time, you
Yeah.
don't need to have
Yeah. Yeah.
it all figured out straight away. So,
No, no, no. You'll figure it out together.
yeah,
And of course, within a family context versus friends versus workplace, there are different things at play that make it more or less difficult to do the relational approach, right?
of
Um,
course. Yeah.
so it's not maybe an answer for everything, but I think I have room to be surprised, and
Hmm.
pleasantly surprised at that sometimes, with folks that I didn't expect or I didn't see as maybe having the capacity to be supportive, but given enough time, space, and, whether it's together in conversations with each other or they have their own separate conversations. Some of them I would have been surprised that they ever get to a supportive place, but it helps them, right? So
Hmm.
it's just, yeah, allowing people to have their own journey, and I'll be a smart part of it, or maybe sometimes bigger, but yeah, that can be helpful.
Hmm. I see a lot of comments on social media about this and how
Mm,
people interpret um, pretty much everything that I post on social media as forcing.
mm,
There's usually at least once a week we'll get a sort of comment like that, and I find it really interesting because at no point have I ever written something like that
mm,
on social media, and you would not approve it if I had. So
no,
I find it really interesting the way that people interpret someone suggesting something as being forced. And
mm,
really, I think what they mean is I'm witnessing somebody say something that I'm not comfortable with.
mhm,
And that's the difference, is that you're witnessing somebody asking for something,
mhm,
isn't the same as being forced to do it.
And I think it is important for folks to know that we do get a steady stream of responses
Hmm.
to a lot of things that we put out there, and some of it doesn't, at least for me, feel very controversial. It's
No.
pretty small stuff too, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
some of the other comments are like, "Why are you even talking about this? Is so small." I'm like, okay, we're definitely, the ethos that we have at Transfocus in general is offering, right? We're consistently
Hmm.
inviting, offering. These are options to consider. We recognize there's a lot to balance in various decision making for especially organizations. So the fact that people misinterpret is surprising, but also probably haven't spent a lot of time looking deeply into what we're talking about.
Yes.
Um, but it is something that we do navigate, and it does give us some insight as to where folks are at,
Hmm.
and not necessarily ready yet. I always put
Hmm.
some potential for them to change in there, but that yeah, they're not ready yet to see what we're saying, what we're pointing
Hmm.
to, what the options are. And I'm actually more interested, rather than people kind of being grumpy, if we should characterize them as such, is people offering other options. Like for me,
Hmm.
I'm more interested in generating ideas, because some of these are complex, and
Hmm.
how are we going to deal with these in ways that everyone can feel included? And
Hmm.
that's like, yeah. So if people if they counter with other ideas, not just the status quo, um,
Hmm.
then that would be really fascinating. But unfortunately,
Hmm.
some people are not quite there yet.
No, I think a lot of the comments that we get on social media tend to be well, my interpretation of it is that people have an idea in their head of what trans people are like and what they're doing.
Yeah,
And then even if you could put something entirely rational, and because you've said it from the perspective of a trans person,
right.
it is dismissed. And I think that's what I would love to see, is maybe just seeing it
Mm,
for what it is and not for
mm,
what you think it is. Does that
yeah,
make sense?
yeah,
Like just being able to broaden that a little bit and see, like, okay, this is coming from somebody I don't agree with, but what are they actually saying? Like if I
yeah,
can look past the the individual almost.
yeah. And engaging with the idea directly.
Hmm.
And you don't have to take everything, but there's going to be valuable aspects
Right.
even if you
Yeah.
don't agree with them. Like, and the thing is that that's typically what I try to do with
Hmm.
people I don't agree with, even on the issues of gender diversity. And that
Hmm.
is often not, that type of approach is not extended our way. So
No.
it is, for me, sometimes sad, right? Because then we
Yeah.
can, it's more difficult path, but yeah, who knows?
Hmm.
Maybe things will change. But yeah,
Fingers crossed.
that is a very interesting way of putting it, and at least to me, accurate. Where it's just already preconceived. Like
Hmm.
no matter how we say it, do it, nothing would kind of deter somebody who's just kind of paints all trans people with the same brush. So,
Hmm.
yeah,
Cool.
interesting stuff though.
Cool.
But this is a
Hmm.
good topic to kind of think through, and yeah, curious what we'll hear from folks, and curious to hear your thoughts and comments, and perhaps things to add that we didn't talk about how to make more sustainable, kind of low or no resistance change, if that's
Hmm.
possible. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much. It was good to talk this through.
Hmm. Thank you so much. See you later.
Bye for now.
Bye.